Okay, so I think that was a great introduction to what Banksy is and the mania around him. So Carol, what I want to ask you is what do you know about Banksy's identity? That has to be the biggest question. When I was telling people we were doing this thing on Banksy, they're like, does she know who he is? Does he know? So what do you know?
I think it's really important that we not know who he is, because we're so personality driven. And so the minute somebody says something, we have to know what political party they belong to, who they've been married to, how they treat their employees, you know, blah, blah, blah. And so their message really gets lost. And so we don't know who Banksy is. So therefore the message is front and foremost. It's just all about the message.
Okay. And so what can you say about his message? Can you reduce it down to a couple sentences?
Yeah, he's really anti-capitalism, anti-war. That's really what it is. He uses symbolism of children a lot because he wants to envision a world that is safe for children.
Right. So you think that is his anonymity, has that actually ironically propelled him into greater notoriety? I mean, if he
absolutely.
So
absolutely.
if he was Joe Block, it was the name or something,
right?
He wouldn't be as famous.
He wouldn't be as famous. And what is also wonderful is that he's kind of anti-marketing at the same time. Like, for instance, he'll just at the beginning of the New York residency, he says something like, you know, the date, and that's it. And everybody wants to know what it is. And he'll put up his website. And this is when I got started. When I knew that I wanted to write about it, was when he was doing his New York residency, and I got into it. And then I thought, well, you know, all that information is still going to be on the website, right? And after the last day, I went to the website; it was gone. Like street art, it pops up with no advance notice, and then when it's done, it's done. It's done.
So yeah, let's hear about how you got interested in Banksy, writing about him.
Yeah, well, it began with it's interesting because it began with my son, who insisted that I take Banksy seriously, and he has a background in art, and he had gone to see Banksy's exhibition in LA in 2008. But then Banksy came to New York, and my very good art critic friends were really dissing him. And I realized that I just was in the right position, I guess. I realized that he was setting them up, just like Mayor Bloomberg to be his best publicity agent. So my friend Jerry goes out to this piece, the You Complete Me piece that's behind Jeannie. And he says, what's so great and political about this?
Can I ask everybody to mute themselves? I hear somebody. There.
So he goes out to this piece and he says, what's so great and political about this? You know, it's art. It's not great art. It's in silhouette, blah, blah, blah. He didn't do his homework. He didn't go to Banksy's website, because if he'd gone to Banksy's website, he would have heard a voice, an American voice, not Banksy, saying, you are in Midtown Manhattan. If you are looking for one of the great artworks of the 21st century, you're in the wrong place, because what you see is a dog peeing on a fire hydrant, and it's in silhouette. And we all know that great art is about light. And then he goes into the juxtaposition of the blah-de-blah into art speak, and he says, welcome to the art world. So basically, he set Jerry up. He somehow knew that on the third day, an art critic was going to go out there. I don't know how he knew this, but he knew this, and dump on it.
And pee on it, piss on it.
Oh, piss on it, yeah, piss on it, exactly. And complete it by pissing on it. And so Jerry completed it by pissing on it. And to this day, he doesn't know that happened. I just sent him the book, so he's about to find out. Oh, but he to this day one of our biggest art critics does not know that
How he,
Banksy
how he was played,
totally played,
yeah.
totally played.
So that's one thing. I want to talk a lot about the, the merits, Banksy's merits. But one thing I want to start out with you, with your background in art criticism and as an artist. What is art to you? You have a whole chapter on that in your book, and I think it's
right. Well, I think part of it is, and my interest in Banksy is that, yes, I'm an insider in the art world, but I never went to art school. And so I came into it at a time when you could, when you didn't need credentials, that you could really make your way into a field just by, I guess I have to say, immodestly being good at what you do. So I started writing about art. I was in politics and I learned how to write press releases. And then I started writing press releases for local art center. And then a magazine that was starting up asked me to write reviews. And then I became managing editor of that magazine. So it was all sort of serendipitous and by accident. What was the question you asked me? I'm not sure I'm answering it.
What is art to you?
So I came to art from the outside. I didn't go to school and learn it the way it's supposed to be. So art to me is really an experience that changes how you look at the world. And that's really what it is. It isn't an object or a thing out there. It's an experience that changes how you look at the world.
Right. And so for you, graffiti can fall into that.
Anything can fall into it. But also I had the advantage. I was showing at a blue chip gallery in New York, one of the biggest galleries in the world. And the dealer there, who was in his 80s, loved self-taught artists. And when the graffiti artists came to New York and were painting the trains, he fell in love with them. And his was the first blue chip gallery to exhibit the work of street artists. So I was there on both sides in the very beginning of when street art really became known as art.
Right, right. And but not, I mean, obviously not everyone agrees with you that street art is art. So let's talk about why the art world scoffs at Banksy. I think that I didn't realize that they scoffed at him or they didn't like him. I didn't realize that.
First of all, the art critics don't like anything the public likes too much. They just can't stand it. They want to have this superior place. And the other thing is that he doesn't play the game. So while the art critics say they hate the art school complex, that they hate the mega galleries, if he had shown at a mega gallery like Gagosian, they would have bothered to see his film before they wrote about it. They would have bothered to, like Jerry would have gone to his website to do research and found out that Banksy was making fun of him. But he didn't even go to his website. He didn't feel he had to, because Banksy isn't part of this system and he's not making money for anyone in the system. And that, even though people talk a good game about how much they hate money in the art world, still, if you're not part of the system, they don't take you seriously.
I just find it crazy, but because I feel like when I look at his stuff, I mean, it's a contextual. You have to look at it in context, and there's so many layers to it, which I appreciate. And it's just, it makes me think. So the art critic, like the straight and narrow art critics are not fond of him, but the public loves him.
The public loves him. And so I compare Banksy's work to John Cage had these things called happenings. And he said he had these events that he said were like to catch a fish, the nature of which you do not know. And I see Banksy's work as setting situations up to create events, and what happens after the completed part is part of the work itself. I also look at art as everything is part of the work. So if you read wall text in a museum and you get an opinion of what that art is about, it's very hard to have your own idea after you've read it.
Right.
So I see the wall text as part of the art. I see everything as part of the art. And so to me, what happened after Banksy's pieces was part of the art.
But how did, yeah, but I don't understand how it seems like it's so well controlled, and I wonder if things have ever gone haywire. I mean, it doesn't, and like not what he expected.
Well, it's very interesting. I've discovered, now we don't know who he is. I'm going to refer to him as him, but he has to be a worldwide organization.
Oh yeah, okay. Because
has to be. And we don't know if the Banksy who they say started out in Bristol is the same Banksy we have today. We don't know that. There could have been 10 Banksys. But Banksy, which we'll talk about, is, I think, a mega organizer, like detail to the max.
Right.
And everything has to be its own sort of mismatched way. So we'll talk about the hotel that I went to in the West Bank. But I was saying to my friend when we were there that I really thought that the salt and pepper shakers on the table were placed exactly in the place that he wanted them, and that the person who was setting the table had a diagram as to where they should go. It's sort of the right, not right place.
Yeah, yeah. So let's just talk about, you brought up the hotel. I know that you really wanted to talk about. So it's called
Waldorf Hotel. It was, I don't know what it's doing now in the era of COVID, but it was built to bring attention to what was happening in the West Bank of Israel, where the Palestinians were, of course, separate. And when the wall was built dividing Israel and Palestine, they lost their economy. And then the tourists would only come, Jerusalem is 6 miles away, but the tourists would just then not come and spend the night, but come to Bethlehem for the day, see the holy sites and leave. So with the hotel there, the hotel began to be a reason to stay over. And other hotels came up and restaurants around it. And there's a museum in the hotel called the Museum of the Wall. And it's not political, it's about the wall. It's not about who built the wall. It's just like the wall is bad and we have to get rid of the wall.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a museum there with the history of the wall. And now the tours that go to the religious sites also go to the hotel and to the museum. So he's really brought this whole thing to I had been to Jerusalem a long time ago, but I was not aware of the politics in the East until I was involved with Banksy.
Right.
So I just want to finish what I was going to say about the way he operates. So he built this hotel, which is really all of his work, and then he donated it to the Palestinians. So he doesn't make any money on it, it's theirs. And he spent months putting it together in secret, like nobody knew this was happening. And like everything else, it was announced the day it opened, like, oh, it's there. And so he did all this work and left it in the charge of a Palestinian man he had known as a businessman and then a driver because he couldn't get any work, a man he really trusted. And this man was running the hotel, but this man was also dealing with all the international press that was descending on this hotel. He'd never done that before, but Banksy trusted him to do it. Banksy was gone. And so it's like, it amazes me that he's like this sort of, mega manager who will then just leave and let things fall the way they fall.
I want to say, I want to know what he studied. We assume he didn't study art, but it sounds like he might have been he's so worldly, he must be really well read and obviously very a good as you say, a good organizer.
Well, the story is that Banksy came up through the street art in Bristol, which is, near the coast of England. And it was in the 90s, it was a really, I don't know if everybody knows the band Massive Attack, but Massive Attack is a really important band that brings together a lot of different kinds of influences. And so there was electronic music, East Indian music, rap, all of these different influences in music, and street art came together in Bristol. And still now, if you go to Bristol, it's covered with street art. It's really like a street art mecca.
Wow.
So he came up through this very rich cultural spot. And
Right.
I think, and that was a big influence.
But I mean, do you think he's college educated? Do you have any, I mean,
I don't know. I think he dropped out.
yeah, yeah. And so interesting to me, and it's a question I keep, and by the way, guys, if you want to write your questions, you're gonna have some time to talk to Carol directly, so please put them in chat. But what I find amazing is, how does he support himself? How does he make money? I mean, because he's obviously, he has a whole corporation called the Pest Control, you said, or is that right? It's called Pest Control. And so he's got employees, he's got
all sorts of, I mean, to do something like the hotel or Dismaland, which we can talk about, which is a 5-week theme park, which brought 58 artists from around the world, and films and acts at night and concerts. That costs a lot of money, but he hasn't sold anything since, you know, that you could go out and buy, except this piece I bought at the hotel. Only in the bookstore at the hotel was there.
But that might go to the hotel, not to him.
That's true. It did go to the hotel. You're right.
So how, I mean,
there's nothing for sale. So we don't.
So, yeah. How did, and because the things he does on the street, I mean, in the documentary, they talk about people taking, you know, drilling it out to sell, but he doesn't get that. He doesn't get the money.
It's part of the mystery.
Yeah. So here we're having,
just like everybody wants to talk about, you know, a celebrity's marriage situation or their political affiliation. They want to talk about how much money they make, but they can't do that with Banksy either.
Right. It's just
and
amazing.
all the things that you see sold at auction. A lot of people who don't know how the art world works, and why would you? Those pieces that are sold at auctions for millions of dollars, that's what we call secondary market, which means somebody bought that work a long time ago, has kept it, and is now selling it. And they're the ones making money. It's the collector making the money. None of it goes to the artists. And of course, artists hate this.
Yeah.
But
and all of his work is
none of it goes to the artist.
And all of his work is secondary because he doesn't have a mechanism to sell directly.
Yeah, right. Since 2008. So a lot of the things that you see at auction, of course, were purchased before 2008. But that's why he did that shredded piece at Sotheby's that was so famous when this piece was being sold and the gavel went down. The piece went through the frame, through a shredder into ribbons. And it was supposed to be ribbons like spaghetti, but it malfunctioned and it stopped, but still it was shredded. And it was really his gesture saying, you know, screw the auction business.
But of course that piece now is worth twice as much.
It's just the way it goes.
Okay, Donna, you have a question. You've been waiting patiently. Donna Tarzian, can you unmute yourself if you want to ask? Are you still there?
Oh yeah.
Okay, here you go.
Thank you. Hi, Carol.
Can you put it on your camera, or are you shy?
All right. Let's see. Here we are.
Okay, wait.
Here we are. Oh,
never mind. It's okay. It's okay if you can't, if it doesn't work.
no, it's working.
Okay.
I think. I don't know what's going on.
I think not, but let's just go ahead and ask the question.
Okay. Anyway, so Carol, thank you. It's really interesting. You know, I've been following Banksy's work for a long time. I've been to Europe. There's like these Banksy shows that are supposedly unauthorized.
Right.
There's lots
That's
of
a
fake
whole other
Banksy.
discussion.
Yeah. Yeah, fake Banksy. And then, like on Instagram, there's like Banksy archives, but it's like, is that really Banksy? So I just wanted you to speak to all of that stuff.
Well, that's a really good question because, and it's important because Banksy does have an Instagram account where he posts regularly. And that's the only official, that's the only thing that's official unless there's an event and he puts up a website.
And what's the official one? Just
Oh,
Bank,
yes.
It's just Banksy,
Banksy.
just
Okay,
at Banksy.
at Banksy.
But he doesn't have a Facebook account. That's the only thing he has. And it's actually not very big, as you can imagine, which is surprising, but it has 10 million followers.
Oh, wow.
It's extraordinary. I'm sorry, I lost the question in my head.
Oh, the fake Banksies and what?
The fake Banksy shows, that's very important. All those shows that you see all over the world have nothing to do with Banksy. They're taking total advantage of him. And they're borrowing things from collectors and then they're charging like $30, $40 to get in. And Banksy doesn't see any of that. And then they're ripping off, their t-shirts, that's a ripoff. And they're selling them in the gift shop. And it's totally unauthorized. And he, he can't say anything because his own work is illegal. So how can he say, well, these shows are illegal? He can't, because, his work is graffiti, it's illegal.
And
So
also, if he did try to sue, he'd have to identify himself, correct? Or
maybe not. That's a question. A corporation may be able to sue. But people going into it need to know that this is, and the worst one was when he opened his hotel in Bethlehem, they put up one of those shows in Israel at the same time, which made it look like he was playing both sides.
oh, yeah.
And yeah, there was one in Tel Aviv and it made it look like he was playing both sides. And that was really just evil, I think.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
Yeah, so that's what those are about.
Elizabeth Pimento, am I saying that right? If you want to unmute, you can put your camera on and ask, because I love when people have their cameras on when they ask. There you are, Elizabeth.
Okay, well, let's see. I had a couple of questions.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
If I can remember them. One was, is there a way, or has this been tried or done, where a really good art analyst can look at the work that's been done and determine if it's been done by one person or several, or how many were done by the same person?
Oh, that's interesting. No, you can't actually tell how many people made it. I think there's probably one person making it. I also think there's one person being the graffiti person because he's never been caught. Imagine over 20 years, never been caught. So can you train someone to never be caught? I don't know. But all the other graffiti artists at some point get caught and he doesn't get caught. So I think there's one person who knows how to do it. And as far as the art goes, it is authenticated by his management company, Pest Control. So you can ascertain whether it is authorized and official or not, or whether it's a ripoff. And you send them a picture of it and all the information, and they will send you a certificate of authenticity if it is indeed authentic.
You mean even if you're like walking around and you see one and you want to know if it really is?
Well, that you can check on the internet.
Oh, okay.
That you can check on the internet because there will be a trail of information. And when he does put something up, originally, if there's a question about it, he announces it on his website. So you will know if it is his or not.
Yeah.
It might take him a few days and people might be wondering, is it? But eventually he will acknowledge it on his website, and that's how you know it's a real one.
Yes, and Elizabeth also asked how many of the art pieces done in New York at the New York residency he had are still up. Do you know?
One.
Which one?
It's adorable. It's at 79th and Columbus, and it's a little boy smashing the water pipe.
Oh,
and it's really fun because the people who own it, which was Zabar's,
oh, that's
the owner of Zabar's, decided that they would put plexi over it and preserve it, which of course isn't really authentic, but it's the best you can do.
mhm.
So they put plexi over it. And when I was out there, I was doing a shoot with a film company and we were interviewing people on the street and so on. A guy stopped by and he said he just takes it on himself to keep the plexi clean. Every week he comes and he cleans it.
Oh my God. And that's 79th and what?
Columbus, Broadway.
Oh, and Broadway. I'm going to write that down for anybody
Yeah.
who's going
Yeah.
to New York or lives in New York.
79th and Broadway.
Okay. And Marcelina, you had a question. Marcelina, are you there?
Yep, hang on. Oh yeah, I was just very curious about Dismaland and that whole thing and what were the kind of legal ramifications after that whole thing happened. Did Disney try to sue them?
No, Disney didn't try to sue them. It's
So maybe
hilarious.
explain what that was all about.
Hmm?
Just explain what Dismaland was.
Yeah, Dismaland was an anti-capitalist amusement park. Well, it was dedicated to the failure of capitalism, basically. And I think I'm the only person who figured this out. I went to the Venice Biennale that year, and it happened to be, the theme was the failure of capitalism. But it was so ironic because the Venice Biennale is like totally for the 1%. These people come in their yachts, they stay in these grand hotels, and they were being subjected to 5-hour readings of Das Kapital. And I thought, and and it cost money to get in. And I thought, there's no irony here. Where is, this was just insane to me when I went. And then I had to go back because Dismaland, of course, popped up. I had just been in Europe. And there's no advance warning. And so I'm like, oh my God, I have to go right back. And it turned out that it's dedicated to the failure of capitalism. And it's 58 artists from around the world, like the Venice Biennale, bringing them all together. Not only did he bring their work together, he brought them together and put them in a hotel together. From, and these are people from warring parts of the world too, from Afghanistan and Iran and Iraq and Palestine and Israel and of course Ireland and Minnesota and whatever. But he brought all these artists together and they were given a lot of freedom to do what they wanted to do. And it was hilarious. I said, it's like it's your inner teenager gets to express there. And then I talked about how I took my son to a punk club when he was 11, and he said he loved it because he said, this is a place where you can't embarrass yourself. So, Dismaland was like that. There was no right way to do anything. Even the exit said no exit over the top of it. So to get out, you had to go, defy the sign. So it was this place where everything was kind of upside down. And if you wanted to be grumpy, you could be grumpy. And of course, all the guides.
Sleepy too. You could be sleepy or you could be dopey.
Right. And all the guides had their Mickey Mouse hats on, but they were cranky. And so I said, I was trying to win one of these games, which of course you can't win because you can't win them. The carousel doesn't work. The Ferris wheel goes the wrong way. I mean, everything is backwards. And I said to my friend when I was trying to hit this thing, I said, well, I tried. And the guy who was behind the desk said, yeah, but not hard enough.
Yeah.
And it just had this atmosphere of well, for me, it was perfect because I've been a political activist and I've been in punk clubs and I'm in the art world, and it all came together. And you could be angry at the world and have fun at the same time, which is pretty hard to do.
I was going to say, and I think he does that. Obviously, he's got a sense of humor.
Yeah.
Things like which is very appreciated in times like this. Michelle Martel, I think you have a very interesting perspective. So Michelle is an intellectual property attorney, and so this is interesting about the trademark. You want to say?
Well, so yeah, there's lots of things. I don't know, Carol, the fact that his artwork is illegal means he couldn't enforce it, but I pointed out the thing that they have trademarks in Banksy. So if you were going to put Banksy on a t-shirt, pest control could come and probably does sue you because you're infringing on their trademark.
They don't. What he's referring to, they don't. No, what he's referring to is graffiti is illegal.
Yeah. I'm just saying there's a system in place if in fact they wanted to enforce traditional intellectual property rights,
right,
like trademarks,
right,
they could do that. Yeah.
They could do that, but then that would be going against the whole ethos of doing things illegally.
Exactly. Oh, so it's more about that. Like we're not managing that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And then I also wanted to just share, not only for people in Austin, but anywhere else, there is a gorgeous book that is about to come out that is 500 pages of the history of Austin street art, graffiti, murals, kind of from the center of all of Austin's street art community. It's gorgeous. You can, I mean, it's been funded on Indiegogo, but you can jump in and grab it.
Well, I see there's a link in the chat.
Yeah, I dropped a link in the chat. I mean, it's going to be amazing.
Oh,
that's great.
But thank you. This is super interesting.
Well, I feel that one of the things I talk about, there's a chapter called The Case for Graffiti. And one of the things I think that's important about graffiti, there's a difference between murals, which are authorized and you have to like show your slides and, be chosen, and graffiti, which you just put up. And in every other situation now that we have the internet, if you're a musician, you can just be like Louis Capaldi sitting on his bed in Scotland, playing something and writing a song that's now been in the top 100 for 3 years. You can do that. He didn't have to go through the usual channels. You don't have to anymore. You can publish your own book. But still, the art world has these doors, these gatekeepers. And so the only art you ever see is art that's been authorized by somebody else. And they usually have a reason why they, a financial reason in that piece of art. So I think it's really important that there be a place where art can just live in the world. And you don't have to pay $25 to get in. And galleries are really intimidating for people who are not used to them, and even for that people who are. And people aren't just going to go off the street and wander around in a gallery. They don't feel welcome there. So this is really important, that I think that there be art that's accessible and free.
Yes, absolutely. How do you see him maturing or changing? It sounds like doing this hotel, doing this Dismaland, that's different. Is he evolving?
He's doing bigger and bigger projects, but they're different every time. Like he set up a store to sell items so that he could buy a boat for the woman captain who was saving refugees. He'll do projects like that. Or he did a little project recently in Bristol. There was a statue of a guy who turned out to be a big slave trader. And 4 people in Bristol went and toppled that statue, and only the pedestal was left. And they toppled the statue and they threw it in the river. And they were arrested. And so Banksy made t-shirts that were available only in certain stores that people could buy and pay for their legal representation. and they got out, they got off.
And they, but like, what was the t-shirt look like? What was
It
it?
just looked like the pedestal.
Oh, just the, okay.
Just the pedestal, and said Bristol. And that was it, just the pedestal, empty pedestal.
Well, he does seem like he does a lot of good works. I like in the New York show or documentary, he did something, donated it to a thrift store. He donated something
Right.
to help a thrift store, which helped poor people. So he's got a good heart, and it's just, I personally would be fascinated to meet him. I'm surprised that you say that.
Well, he always says that when there's quotes, he said, you'd be really disappointed.
I don't know. I have a crush on him already. So he looks like, he's just so smart.
Really.
Yeah, really, really, really smart. So how do you rank him as an artist? I mean, in the great pantheon of artists.
Well, I think I wouldn't have done this if I didn't think he was the most important artist today with the biggest influence. I think he really opens it up and encourages art more than anyone. And there's so many layers to what he does and so much opportunity. And I think that if you look at it in that vein, he's the biggest influence, and there's no one like him. There's no one like him.
Has there ever been, I mean, in just the art history, looking at art history, not just living, I mean, has there been other artists that you can compare him to?
No, that's the point. Yeah, that's really the point. There's really nobody like that. And yeah, and he's always throwing a wrench in the works. And that's what I think is really great, you know, and showing up people like Mayor Bloomberg, you know, who just ends up looking like an idiot. And you know, but being Banksy's publicity agent at the same time. I mean, it's great.
So, and of all the street artists out there, why did he become what he is? I mean, there are a lot of good street artists. But there's something fundamentally different about.
Well, because there's more to it than just putting up the work. You know, there's this whole ethos around it. There's the secrecy, the anonymity, but there's a whole, I mean, well, I wrote a whole chapter on one piece, 6,000 words on one piece in Folkestone, England, which I happen to coincidentally know very well. And by putting up this piece where he put it, because he put it on a wall that was owned by one entity, but being rented by another entity, both of those sort of warring real estate moguls representing different classes in Folkestone. One was a philanthropist, the other ran amusement parks. They had completely different constituencies. And so the people who were occupying the building had it cut out and sent to be sold. And it turns out, I'm not going to do a spoiler on it, but it turns out that they didn't own it. The other philanthropists owned it. And these two guys have been fighting over property in the waterfront for 10 years. Their arguments had gone on for 10 years. They were in the news all the time. And that had died down. But the minute Banksy does this, the whole thing blows up again. And that fight between these two guys is going on again, and they're doing it again. And I'm like, that's not an accident.
Yeah.
Not an accident. And then when you read the whole chapter, you see it really can't be an accident because there's a kicker.
Yeah.
And he doesn't care that anybody knows this. If I hadn't written about it, nobody would have known it.
But he obviously does his research.
He does his research, and then he's sitting there chuckling when everybody falls into line. But
I want to say he reminds me of some like a movie character, like a cat burglar or something. I don't know, but even what? Somebody help me. Anybody? Like what character? Movie character or fictional character? Like the Scarlet? Is it Scarlet Pimpernel? What's that? Yeah. What do you think, Elizabeth? Who's he?
I was thinking kind of Zelig. You know, he's kind of always there. but not really, like in the
Yeah.
background kind of, but everywhere,
Right. And that's a really good point. I'm so glad you said that, because by being anonymous, he is everywhere. You don't know. He could be right here or wherever you are. And that's one of the things that anonymity lends, is he's not just in one place. I'm so glad you said that.
Yeah, no,
Huh.
and he said somewhere that invisibility is his superpower, which of course,
Right.
women at this age have already discovered, right? We've already found out that let's make it invisibility, or we make it work for us, or well, we're trying not to be invisible, but if we are, there are some benefits. So I thought that was funny.
Yeah.
Okay, this is something funny. You said that the thing you don't want to find out is that it's Damien Hirst.
I don't know if you guys know Damien Hirst, but Damien Hirst is like the mega artist in England who makes all this money. So instead of doing a hotel on the West Bank, where people can come and stay and see other people living in poverty, Damien Hirst has done suites in Las Vegas that you can rent for $200,000 a night. That's the difference. However, the irony of the whole thing is that Damien Hirst is something that everybody in the art world laughs at. They just can't take him quite seriously, because he's just really appears to be in it for the money. And then at Dismaland, Banksy had a Damien Hirst in the gallery, and it was one of the best pieces in the show.
Really?
Yep, and he said he had to put it in because it was so good. It typified the whole thing. And what it was a big round table, and sticking up from the table were knife blades. And over the table was a beach ball hovering in the air. And the air was holding it up, and it was hovering over all these knife blades. And it was amazing.
Wow.
And, yeah, so every time you think you know something, Banksy turns it on its ear.
Well, maybe Damien Hirst is Banksy, just to stop, because he's got money to do all this. And he wants to absolve himself from he wants to make the money, and then he wants to do something with it.
Who knows?
About that.
Who knows?
That's what I might be thinking. Let's see who else had somebody had a question. Donna had a question about in LA, are there still Banksy's in LA?
I think there might be. There was one. I spent a lot of time in LA, and there was one while I was there that was then painted over. I think it was a big mouse or a rat in a parking lot. It was there for years and years and years. He did work in LA when his film came out, because he wanted to publicize the film.
And
but I don't really know what else is there.
Anyway, if you guys don't know, that he did an Academy Award nominated documentary called Exit Through the Gift Store. And he kind of you can explain what he turns the tables kind of.
Well, it's not a documentary, it's a mockumentary, and it's really hard to figure. I mean, I've watched it a bunch of times, and I still can't figure out what's real and what's not. And friends who are editors in the field, film editors, use it as an example of like brilliant editing. But yeah, you can watch it and still be confused.
But there really, okay, we can, this is the weeds if we start talking about it, but he is supposedly interviewed on camera with his voice change and
right.
Start, he's talking about it, and he's kind of like, he's very irreverent. He's kind of mean about something, like mean to that, his former friend or whatever.
Right.
Like his art was terrible. It was really
terrible. And then the irony is that guy has gone on to be an artist on his own right and make a bunch of money.
Yeah, so he's making a bunch of money, but he started out he got his lift by being endorsed by Banksy. So
or not endorsed.
Yeah.
Not endorsed.
Yeah, like saying, yeah. Anyway, okay, Carol, we're winding up. Now, I want to know what piece of Banksy's is the most, in your mind, the most brilliant, or the most memorable piece he's done.
The piece that I think epitomizes his philosophy, can I say,
Mhm.
is the one of the little girl frisking the soldier.
Mm.
We want to live in a world where a little girl can frisk a soldier. And that to me, and it's so innocent, it's not pointing fingers at anyone. It's not blowing anything up to show you how terrible war is. It's just a little girl patting down a soldier. And that's the world we want to live in. And that's why he uses children so much, because it's not about pointing fingers. It's about, let's just make a world that's safe for children.
And where is that piece?
Well, that's one of the ones that was stolen out of the Middle East and sent to be sold. So who knows where that piece is now?
And they can't trace who stole it, or is it because or I mean,
Well, it was cut out. You know, these things are cut out of buildings and removed and sent for sale. So if you own the building, you own the piece.
okay, so it was the people who own the building. So then that means, and I think they address this in the documentary.
They do. They talk about that. That piece is one of the things
Yeah,
in the.
but also they talk about how can it be stolen? I mean, it's not really stolen, is it? If it's on their, you know, that
Because it's street art. Yeah. Yeah.
Marcelina has, I'm going to just have insight into NFTs and whether or not artists are actually making money with them. It's such
Oh, that's not my department.
a,
And it's not ever going to be my department.
I know there's a certain thing that artists are doing related to that, but I can't put my head around it. So
Right. I can't, I am completely, because it is not art-based, but money-based, I'm not interested.
yeah.
I'm just not. I want to know about the art. I want to know about art that will change perceptions, that will change people's lives, that will inspire them. And that's not NFTs.
Yeah, okay. And what are you gonna, what's the thing you think Banksy might do? Did he do anything about Trump or any comment on that?
No, and that's what I really love, is that it's not about personalities. It's not, you'll never see a Netanyahu, you will never see a Trump. Like, for instance, everything in the West Bank is about the wall. Just the wall is bad, get rid of the wall. And so that's what makes his work last so long too, because it's not about a particular situation and personalities that are happening right now. It's about, you know, values that last forever.
Yeah.
And it's very special that way. It's just not pointed at personalities. It's pointed at ideals.
Ideals and asking ourselves to look into our own lives and what we're
and how to make a world that's safe for children. How to make a world that a little girl can just hold balloons and
fly over the wall, right?
Fly over the dividing wall. Fly over the wall, hold the balloons and fly over the wall.
Anybody else have anything, if you want to unmute and say anything to Carol before we finish up? Isn't she great?
Well, this is really fun, and these have been really good questions. I really appreciate it.
Yes. So thank you so much, Carol, for joining us. It's fascinating. And you guys, now you'll definitely, I'm going to hope to see, you can see this book, but you can't see it but really fascinating book, lots of illustrations and
I do have to say this. First of all, it's an absolutely gorgeous book for which I cannot take credit. It's published by MIT, which for me is very, very important in terms of it can't be just because it's published by MIT, it can't be just another pop culture book, which I love. And They did it in such a serious way. It's like, let's just be serious about this. And it's beautifully illustrated. And I have a friend who owns a bookstore, and he said, authors never like the design of the book. And I'm an artist, and I love this design. It's just, I think it's just amazing from beginning to end.
But
And
it is it's very plain, and you like that.
you know what? You see this on a table in a bookstore, and it just pops right out. So what more can you ask?
Yeah, definitely. Well, we really thank you, Carol, and everyone.
Thank you.
It's so much to chew on here, which is why I love doing this stuff. And so many of you are big thinkers, so I know you're going to have a lot to think about tonight with Carol's thoughts on this. And after you read the book, you certainly will. So, Carol, thank you, and thank you everyone who came tonight. And stay tuned, because we'll have more authors that we're interviewing. So stay tuned, and we love Carol and all of you. So thanks.
Thank you, Jeannie, and thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.